Hello everyone, myself Dr. Rajni, Assistant Professor. I'll be taking classes on renal vascular diseases, obstructive uropathy, hydronephrosis and nephrolithiasis. So for this class, we'll be dealing regarding the renal vascular diseases. Moving on to the outline of this renal vascular diseases, you must know regarding the types and definition of the various type of renal vascular diseases, morphology of each one of it, clinical features, and finally the summary of it. So this renal vascular diseases, so among them the most common one are hypertensive vascular disease, which has been again classified into benign nephrosclerosis and malignant nephrosclerosis, renal artery stenosis, thrombotic microangiopathy, and renal cortical necrosis and renal infarcts. So as our topic is related to the what are the changes which occurs in a kidney as a result of hypertension, which affects the blood vessels and even the parenchyma. So before going to the detail in the topic of hypertensive changes which occurs in a kidney, we must know few things regarding the definition of hypertension. So as you all know, hypertension is defined as elevation in the blood pressure, which is systolic more than 120 and diastolic more than 80. And as per the American Heart Association, this hypertension has been classified clinically. So this is normal, that is less than 120, systolic and diastolic of 80. Pre-hypertension will be called when there is a systolic of 120 to 139 and diastolic of 80 to 89. And hypertension, that is stage 1 and stage 2, that is 140 to 159 of systolic and diastolic of 90 to 99, and systolic stage 2, that is more than 160 and diastolic of more than 100. So the one more thing that is, which is another entity which has to be remembered, that is isolated systolic hypertension, when there is a isolated persistently elevation in the systolic blood pressure that is more than or equal to 140, where the diastolic remains less than 90. So another entity, that is malignant hypertension, which will be explained in a further slides. That is where it is a type of hypertension which occurs sudden in onset in a previously normotensive individuals, which is more than 200 of systolic and diastolic of more than or equal to 140. So this should be clear, the definition and the classification of hypertension. So how is this hypertension has been etiologically classified? It is classified based into two types. One is essential or primary hypertension among 90% of the individuals. So where the underlying factors comes under the essential hypertension would be the genetic factors. The hypertension, for example, hypertension which occurs in the twinning hypertensions, which occurs among the twins. Racial, as the Africans will be mostly affected than the whites, and other environmental factors. And the secondary hypertension, which compromises of 10% of the other types of hypertension. So why it is called as secondary? It's because there are underlying pathology or the mechanisms which are associated with other systems like kidney, endocrine. So there are the various other systems has been affected, which causes the elevation in the blood pressure. That is what it is called as secondary hypertension. So among that, the renal causes which will compromises to the secondary hypertension is divided into renal vascular, that is due to the defects in the vessels, and the renal parenchymal diseases, which will be explained, the causes will be explained in the further slides. So another one thing which has to be remembered, the endocrine causes. Endocrine causes, we have adrenocortical hyperfunction, hyperparathyroidism, and oral contraceptives. So this one more thing which has to be, I would like to tell here is hypertension or the elevation in the blood pressure, for that to occur, the most common mechanism is the activation of renin-angiotensin mechanism. So how does the oral contraceptives causes the increase in the blood pressure? It's due to the underlying pathology would be the hepatic synthesis of renin. So that plays a very important role in causing the elevation of blood pressure. And coarctation of aorta, that causes the elevation of systolic blood pressure in the upper part of the body due to the obstruction or constriction. Neurogenic, the neurogenic causes would be psychogenic or polyneuritis, or it would be the increase in the intracranial pressure. So related to our topic now, we are reading what are the changes which occurs because of the hypertension occurring in a kidney. What are the changes it causes in a kidney? So renal hypertension is also defined as hypertension which is produced by a renal diseases. So as it was explained in the previous slide, so the renal diseases will be classified into two types. One is vascular and parenchymal. So this is called as renal vascular hypertension because there is a abnormality or defects in the renal blood vessels that will lead to the elevation of the blood pressure, that is hypertension. So the most commonest cause would be the renal artery stenosis, preeclampsia, eclampsia, polyarteritis nodosa, and another one thing is fibromuscular dysplasia of renal artery. So this is one of the heterogeneous entity which will be explained in the slides where I'll be dealing with the renal artery stenosis. So this fibromuscular dysplasia is also one of the cause for the occurrence of renal artery stenosis causing the elevation in blood pressure. So other causes would be renal parenchymal disorders. So these are the few causes which were explained in the previous classes, like glomerulonephritis, pyelonephritis, interstitial nephritis, diabetic nephropathy, and even some amount of renin producing tumors. So as it is already told, renin plays a very important role it plays a very important mechanism in causing the elevation of blood pressure. So any tumors which are producing the renin, so they'll be also involved in causing the renal hypertension. So the mechanism of renal hypertension should be known first. So as I've already explained, renin-angiotensin mechanism plays a very important role in causing the renal hypertension. So what happens exactly here is, as we know, 1/3 of the cardiac output will be received by the kidney vessels or kidney. So if there is any reduction in the cardiac output, it leads to the renal ischemia. So when there is a ischemia, there will be a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate, which activates the synthesis of renin, which is located in the juxtaglomerular cells within the glomerulus, and this secreted renin will be released into the circulation as it will be transported to the liver, which activates this angiotensinogen enzyme, which converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, which is located in the lung. That angiotensin 2, again, it activates the synthesis of aldosterone, which is located in the adrenal cortex. So this aldosterone plays a very important role as it activates three mechanisms. One is the same vicious cycle of activation of renin-angiotensin mechanism. Along with that, it causes an increase in the sodium and water retention. So one more point which has to be remembered here is sodium plays a very important role. So especially physiologically for the maintenance of blood pressure, sodium and cardiac output plays a very important role in maintaining the blood pressure. If there is excessive retention of sodium, it also leads to the imbalance of the sodium levels in the blood. So that will also add up for the elevation of blood pressure. And this aldosterone also does one more mechanism, that it causes an increase in the proximal tubular reabsorption of the sodium, again leads to the imbalance. And one more thing is it causes the release of vasodipressors like prostaglandin E2 and F2. So these are the This is the main mechanism of renin-angiotensin mechanism with the release of aldosterone causing the elevation of blood pressure, which has to be remembered. So moving on to our topic, that is what are the effects of hypertension, has been classified into benign nephrosclerosis and malignant nephrosclerosis. So before knowing about this benign nephrosclerosis, the two entities you must know, that is benign hypertension and what is malignant hypertension. So benign hypertension is nothing but it is a elevation of a blood pressure slowly over a period of years in any patient, that is benign hypertension. Whereas malignant hypertension, it is a sudden onset of blood pressure in a previously normotensive patients. It is called as malignant hypertension. So moving on to the benign nephrosclerosis. So we should know what is this nephrosclerosis. Nephrosclerosis is a term which has been used for the renal pathology as a result of hypertension. There is a decreased blood supply leads to the ischemia, which causes endothelial injury, followed by the necrosis with the activation of inflammatory infiltrates. Along with the entire this necrotic debris and the inflammatory exudates will be replaced by the collagen or even the basement membrane matrix deposition, which is called as sclerosis. So that is what the morphology has been defined in the terms of nephrosclerosis as a result of benign or malignant hypertension. So as I've already explained, due to the reduction in the blood supply causes the ischemia, which leads to the blood vessel walls. As we know, blood vessels has tunica intima, media and adventitia. So this tunica intima, so as these blood vessels, there is activation of the inflammation along with the endothelial damage causing the necrosis. It would which has been with a persistent elevation of the blood pressure leads to the ischemia. It would cause the necrosis, necrotic debris and the inflammatory infiltrates will be replaced by the basement membrane matrix or even the collagen deposition, which causes the entire vessel wall will become completely thickened. The walls will be very much thickened with a narrow lumen. So ischemia, not only, it need not that it should affect only the vessels, it will also affect the parenchyma of the kidney, so which leads to the chronic tubulointerstitial injury or even the glomerulosclerosis as a result of deterioration of the renal function. So who are the patients who are at our risk for this benign nephrosclerosis? Patients who are having the advanced age and who are having simultaneously diagnosed with hypertension and diabetes mellitus will be at a higher risk to develop the nephrosclerosis. So there are two pathological mechanisms has been involved, as it is being explained that each vessel wall will have the three layers. One is intima, media and adventitia. So the two processes which are involved in the arterial lesions are, one is as a result of the fibrinoid necrosis and even the sclerosis, which leads to the deposition of basement membrane matrix, the entire tunica media, intima layer of the vessel wall will become thickened. And one more thing has to be remembered in case of benign nephrosclerosis is ionization of the arterial walls. What is this ionization? Ionization is nothing but due to the ischemia, there is a endothelial damage of these intima or the lining epithelium of the blood vessels will get damaged, which causes the release of plasma proteins, and there is the increased deposition of the basement membrane matrix due to the persistent ischemia, which will be deposited in the vessel wall in the form of hyalinization, that is eosinophilic material, which will be depicted in the picture in the next slides. So grossly, the one thing has to be remembered in case of benign nephrosclerosis is kidney will usually normal or it will be moderately, it will be reduced in size. And we can see there is the cortical surface has been, the mass of the cortex has been completely lost due to the cortical scarring and shrinkage as a result of ischemia and with the thickening of the blood vessels. and due to the sclerosis of the blood vessels, the entire cortex will be completely shrunken and it will be due to the scarring. And even you can see the entire cortical surface has been studded with a granular surface which is studded with this pale scars, like a V-shaped scars, which has to be remembered. And one more thing regarding the microscopy of the benign nephrosclerosis, as it's already told, there are the vascular changes involves 3 stages. One is necrotizing arteriolitis. So the necrotizing arteriolitis, or it's also called as a hyaline, there will be a type of fibrinoid necrosis. Along with that, there is a hyaline arteriosclerosis. As in the high power view of this, you can see there is a hyalinization of the arterioles, which is associated due to this is tunica intima, media and adventitial layer. As you can see, the entire vessel wall has become very much thickened and deposited, associated with the hyalinization of the arterioles with a narrowed lumen. So along with that, even it will not only affect the kidney, this is deposition of eosinophilic material is called as a hyalinization of the arterioles. So here the parenchymal changes, it also involves that we can see there is some amount of chronic inflammatory infiltrates surrounding the which are present within the renal parenchyma, and even we can see that there is interstitial fibrosis, peritubular necrosis. Even the tubules, because of the ischemia, they will get damaged, or due to the tubular epithelial damage, even the tubules undergo atropic. Okay, that is very important, has to be remembered. So clinically, the patient with a benign nephrosclerosis with the elevation of blood pressure, they will present with a headache, dizziness, palpitations and nervousness. In long-standing cases, on a urine examination, we can see the mild proteinuria as there is a decreased glomerular filtration rate, but there is a filtration of lower molecular weight proteins. So mild proteinuria can be seen with some hyaline and granular CATs. These CATs are nothing but due to as the ischemia or hypertension affects, not only affects the vessels, they'll also affects the renal parenchyma. So the tubular epithelium, when it gets damaged, it causes the release of TAM-OSPL protein. When they combine with either RBCs or inflammatory debris, they forms this hyaline and granular CAS. So rarely renal failure and uremia may occur. So with this background of this benign nephrosclerotic changes, we'll study now something regarding malignant nephrosclerosis. So as I've already explained, it is a hypertension which occurs in a previously normotensive individuals. So it need not, sometimes it might involve a patient who are previously diagnosed with hypertension or who are having some systemic disorders or renal parenchymal disorders such as reflux nephropathy or glomerulonephritis. So usually most commonly it affects the young male. So the pathogenesis is the most common pathogenesis which has to be remembered in case of this entity is fibrinoid necrosis. It's also one type of a necrosis like a caseous and coagulative type of necrosis, but wherever the term fibrinoid necrosis comes, you should remember it is a necrosis of arterioles and the smaller arteries. So as a result of ischemia or a lower blood supply with the endothelial damage, with the activation of chronic inflammatory infiltrates, there is activation of due to the reactivation of the platelets and coagulation factors. It also leads with the formation of microthrombus within the capillary blood of the kidney. That one point has to be remembered. And further, all the arteries and arterioles undergoes this fibrinoid necrosis with a further persistent ischemia. This necrosed debris will be replaced by the sclerosis, that is deposition of a collagen and smooth muscle fibers. So this is a gross picture of the patients who are having that who have been diagnosed with a malignant nephrosclerosis. So one thing has to be remembered in this is, in a patient who has got a malignant nephrosclerosis in a previously diagnosed benign nephrosclerosis, kidney will appear shrunken. Otherwise, in a patient who are having a malignant nephrosclerosis in a previously normotensive individuals, usually the kidney appears enlarged in size and studded with many petechial hemorrhages, or that is pinpoint petechial hemorrhages, because of the severe ischemia, giving the appearance of the kidney that is flea beaten appearance. So this is a gross entirety which occurs in case of malignant nephrosclerosis, and it has to be remembered. So one more thing, microscopy. In case of malignant nephrosclerosis, there are the three microscopical changes occurs in the three under the three stages. One is highly necrotizing arteriolitis. It is also called as fibrinoid necrosis of the arteries. As there is ischemia, that all the arterioles and the small arteries will undergo this fibrinoid necrosis with the accumulation of this chronic inflammatory infiltrates in the form of neutrophils. And as we can see with the persistent ischemia, these necrosed debris on the exudates will be replaced by the sclerosis. The sclerosis is nothing but it's completely, the entire arterial walls will be replaced by the smooth muscle fibers and the collagen or even the basement membrane matrix, which will be deposited in the form of concentric laminations, giving the appearance of onion skin appearance to this arterioles. So here again, even as it was already explained, even the glomerulus shows capillaries will show the presence of some thrombosis because of the activation of platelets and coagulation factors. So this onion skinning should be remembered. It's one of the typical feature of this malignant nephrosclerosis. So this is the visual thing, how the onion skinning appear in case of malignant nephrosclerosis in the arteries, small arteries and the arterioles, which is studded with the chronic inflammatory infiltrates. So clinically, as patients will present with the headache, nausea, vomiting and visual impairments, and as it's already explained, the blood pressure will go more than 200 and diastolic pressure more than 120. So because of the severe increase in the blood pressure, there might be we can see the effect in the retina, that is retinal hemorrhages and papilledema can occur, even the encephalopathy, cardiovascular abnormalities. As patient with left untreated, they might go for renal failure. As because of the renal failure or due to the severe deterioration in the renal function, on a urine examination, yes, there might be a proteinuria along with microscopic or gross or hematuria. Along with that, there is elevated serum creatinine level and even the azotemia, that is increased blood urea nitrogen, as kidney fails to excrete all this waste products due to the severe deterioration of the renal function. And even patients might go for a loss of consciousness or even the convulsions because of the increased elevated blood pressure. So moving on to the next entity, renal artery stenosis. So renal artery stenosis, yes, it is also one type of hypertensive vascular disorders itself. So renal artery, as the name suggests, there is a stenosis, there is an obstruction or occlusion in the renal artery, which has caused the increase in the hypertension or increase in the blood pressure, just because there is a increased production of renin from the ischemic kidney. So if there is any occlusion of the renal artery, there is a ischemia which causes the activation of the renin, and another mechanism is the sodium retention also occurs, as it was already explained in the mechanism how the elevation of blood pressure occur. So this renin and with the sodium retention, both are the factors which causes the occurrence of hypertension. So the causes for the renal artery stenosis, narrowing usually occurs at the origin of the renal artery itself by an atheromatous plate. That's one of the most commonest cause. And who are at a higher risk for the development of renal artery stenosis, the patients who are having the advanced aging or who are having simultaneously diagnosed with a diabetes mellitus, and it's most common in a men. And the second most common for the stenosis is this fibromuscular dysplasia of the renal artery. So what is this fibromuscular dysplasia of the renal artery? It is one type of heterogeneous entity which is associated with the fibromuscular. There is a thickening of the three layers of the vessel. You should remember that is thickening of tunica intima, media and adventitia of the renal artery, which causes a complete obstruction or the stenosis of the renal artery, which leads to the ischemia and causing the elevation release of renin and other mechanisms which plays a very important role in causing the hypertension. So this is a picture of the elastic stain. It is one of the elastic tissue stain, which is a special stain which shows there is a stenotic or narrowed lumen of tunica intima, and you can see this media and adventitia which shows a complete thickening that has been highlighted by the elastic tissue stain. So this has to be remembered. You can see there is a fibrous thickening with the lumen has been showing stenotic or narrowed. So because of the fibrous thickening, yes, that is one of the cause where the renal artery appears occluded or stenosed, that causes the occurrence of hypertension. And the morphological changes, the same thing has to be remembered. Because of the elevation of blood pressure, the same thing, necrosis, and even kidney appears shrunken in size with the loss of cortex of the kidney mass will be lost as a result of ischemia. So moving on to the next entity, that is thrombotic microangiopathies. So thrombotic microangiopathies, as the name suggests, it is a formation of thrombus which will occlude the capillary vessels, arteries, arterioles of the kidney. So this thrombotic microangiopathies, most commonly there are the clinical syndromes which are involved in causing this vascular disease is thrombocytopenic purpura, that is TTP, and hemolytic uremic syndrome. So what do they do? How do these two clinical syndromes plays a very important role in causing the thrombosis of these smaller vessels of the kidney? So what happens exactly in TTP and HUS is, in thrombocytopenic purpura, there is in these patients there is a deficiency of one protease enzyme, that is ADAMST13, that plays a very important role for degradation of von Willebrand multimers. So due to the deficiency of that protease enzyme, it causes the excessive where it fails to break down that von Willebrand multimers. It causes the excessive activation of platelets along with the fibrin, which will be deposited as a thrombi in the capillaries and even the arterioles of the kidney. So that is the mechanism in TTP. So what happens in HUS? It is also one type of, in case of a typical hemolytic uremic syndrome, which occurs following it follows a Shigella dysentery, which is caused by the E. coli strain, which releases the Shiga toxin. So the Shiga toxin is known to cause the excessive activation of platelets and the fibrin, which will be deposited in the form of thrombi, causing the severe ischemia into the capillary bed of the kidney. So this is how the two mechanisms act and causes the excessive activation of platelets, which will be deposited in the form of thrombus. So not only these two will cause the thrombotic microangiopathy, even it would be the infections like E. coli and Shigella, drugs, autoimmune diseases, and pregnancy and preeclampsia, and malignant hypertension, which I have already explained. So patients with a malignant hypertension, as a result of ischemia with the endothelial injury, there is excessive release of a plasma proteins and even the coagulation factors, which will be deposited as a thrombus, causing the thrombotic microangiopathy. So the pathogenesis is it's already explained, as a result of endothelial injury causing the vascular changes, which triggers the passage of platelets and even the coagulation factors to the subendothelial zone into the capillary bed of the kidney, which promotes the thrombosis formation. So that should be clear. And in the topic of thrombotic microangiopathy, you have to remember regarding a hemolytic uremic syndrome and TTP. So the morphologically, it's the same thing. As a result of a thrombus formation, there would be a damage to the endothelium. So as we can see the thrombus in the microvasculature. So as a result of thrombus, there is a ischemia, and there will be a fibrinoid necrosis of the arterioles. That is clear cut, same as of malignant hypertensive changes. And even some arterioles shows the edematic appearance as a result of activation of the inflammatory mediators. And even we can see there is a consolidation and congestion of the glomerulus. And even in the patients with this thrombotic microangiopathy, as even the kidney appears shrunken and with a loss of cortical surface due to the excessive ischemia. There would be a cortical scarring, so the cortical mass would be lost. So these are the morphological changes which we can see it in a patients with TTP and HUS, that is who are presenting with thrombotic microangiopathy. So the clinical features, as a patient will present with thrombocytopenia, as the name suggests, it is thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura. So due to excessive consumption of as the main mechanism or the main pathogenesis is involved is consumption of the platelets. So the patient will present with thrombocytopenia, and the patient will also have, as a thrombus might occlude the blood, the normal vascular flow or the blood flow, which causes excessive breakdown of the RBCs, leading to microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, which has to be remembered. Or due to the excessive thrombus causing the microvascular occlusions, it can cause further other organ dysfunctions also because of ischemia. So these are the clinical features which has to be remembered. So it's already explained. HUS follows the jugular dysentery, and in TTP, it's clinically manifested by the pentad of fever, neurological abnormalities, along with microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, thrombocytopenia, and patient will also present with renal failure. That is, it might be oliguria and anuria. So moving on to the other vascular lesions, which are not that important, but it should be known. So one is atherosclerosis, that is atherosclerotic ischemic renal disease. So what is this atherosclerotic ischemic renal disease? This this type of a renal disease is most common among the older individuals who are at a higher risk to have a atheromatous plaque. Usually this plaque can obstruct or it can cause a unilateral, when it obstructs one side renal artery, it can cause a unilateral renal artery stenosis, which leads to the hypertension, or when it affects or when it obstructs both the sides of bilateral renal artery, it can cause a bilateral renal artery disease, which can be diagnosed by a arteriography. So usually when these plaques obstruct the renal artery, as it is obvious, there is leads to the obstruction associated with the reduced blood supply or the ischemia. So the patients will present with a chronic ischemia. So the next vascular diseases is atheroemboli. So atheroemboli, embolic renal disease, it is called as atheroemboli whenever there's atheromatous plaques, when they from the aorta or renal artery, when they embolize into the intrarenal vessels, especially in patients who are older individuals who are having a severe atherosclerosis, so will present with a ischemia associated with the renal disease. So this is you can see this atheroembolus plaque, which is obstructing the intrarenal vessels. So this picture, it tells that these are all the cholesterol clefts, this white dilated spaces. It's also called as rhomboid clefts. So more commonly in older individuals who are with the severe atherosclerosis, when this emboli, this plaque, atheromatous plaque, when it embolize from the renal artery or even from the aorta into the intrarenal vessels and causing the atheroembolic renal disease. Next is sickle cell nephropathy. So these vascular disorders which occurs as a result of sickle cell disease, these are grouped as sickle cell nephropathy, most commonly in homozygous and heterozygous traits of a sickle cell anemia patients will present with this type of nephropathy. As we know, the sickle cells, when they'll usually cause they undergo extensive destruction when there is a blood flow. So due to the excessive destruction of the RBCs or sickle type of RBCs, it causes severe ischemia with a reduction in the blood supply. There will be a vascular changes associated with the papillary necrosis of the cortex and even the cortical scarring. So usually these patients with the sickle cell nephropathy will present with severe hematuria due to the extensive destruction of the RBCs and even hypostenuria. Hypostenuria is defined as diminished concentrating ability of the urine. So the next vascular disease is diffuse cortical necrosis. Diffuse cortical necrosis, as the name suggests, the entire cortex has been completely necrosed. You can see the pale color necrosis, only leaving the thin rim of the cortex has been spared. So usually this occurs in a patient in obstetric emergencies such as preeclampsia, eclampsia, and abruptia placenta, as this is a gross feature of it, and microscopically we can see there is a completely the entire glomerulus and the tubules, nothing will be seen as it is completely replaced by the pale eosinophilic necrotic material. So this is a diffuse cortical necrosis. So the patient with this diffuse cortical necrosis will present with suddenly they will present with a severe renal failure associated with oliguria and anuria. So the last vascular change or a vascular disorder is renal infarcts. Renal infarcts happen mostly due to the embolism as a result of myocardial infarction, infective endocarditis, or aneurysms also. So as the infarcts, even the class was taken on infarcts by myself when I was talking regarding the hemodynamics. So the infarcts I have told. So usually these infarcts are wedge shaped and most of them will be white. They are anemic because or white, it's called as anemic as they are in pale in color. So the infarcts we should remember usually because of the embolisms, when they go and occlude the blood vessels, they'll result in the form of infarction. So usually they'll be sharply demarcated and by 24 hours they'll become pale yellow and usually they'll heal with the scarring. So the causes for the infarcts has to be remembered, and as the infarcts, what type of a necrosis they will cause? It's mostly it will be of ischemic type of necrosis to the entire cortex, and with a complete scarring of the entire fibrous scarring of the entire cortex we can see. That is the morphological changes. Wherever the infarcts occurs, they will cause a fibrous scarring and with a complete ischemic necrosis due to the reduction in the blood supply and ischemia. There is a complete ischemic necrosis of the cortex, and even there is a fibrous scarring of the cortex. And as whatever the V-shaped scar we saw it over the cortical surface, even on the cortical surface we can see the presence of V-shaped scar itself as a result of severe ischemia. So this is a wedge-shaped infarct. As you can see, the entire cortex will become very pale in color and completely there is a loss in the cortical mass along with the scar. Even they'll heal with the formation of scars, is it? So even they'll form some amount of V-shaped scars, and you can see it's all pale in color. So it's completely pale in color or anemic they'll be. That's what it's called as white infarcts. White infarcts will occur most commonly due to why they are called as anemic infarcts or white infarcts, because due to the lack of collateral circulation they appears very much pale. So with this background, the summary of it. So you must remember hypertension, it will be of two types. One is primary and essential. Primary or essential, that is, and secondary. Secondary, it usually occurs because of the various underlying pathologies. It would be kidney, endocrine, and some other organs. And systemic hypertension, as it's already told, it occurs because of the underlying pathology. It affects most commonly heart and blood vessels. When it affects heart, it causes hypertensive heart disease. When it affects CNS, it causes stroke. Kidneys, it's already explained, that is benign and malignant nephrosclerosis. These are the morphological changes as a result of hypertension in the kidney, that has to be remembered. So heart and blood vessels, which will be already explained in the CVS chapter, and nervous system, that is stroke because of the systemic hypertension. So other renal disorder, other vascular changes or vascular diseases has to be remembered, that is thrombotic renal diseases, cortical diffuse cortical necrosis, and even the infarcts has to be remembered. Thank you.